I'm here with Bobby O'Neill, one of the goats of arm path and throwing mechanics. And I've gotten the pleasure to work with him for a long time, unofficially, just helping you out. And now, as I'm going more into 100K Sports Coach, now we get to actually talk and share some of the stuff that we've learned and that we've worked on. Bobby, why don't I kick it off over to you? How did we initially meet and get together? What was that journey like?
Seems like forever ago, man. It's like we're brothers or something, man. It's awesome. But I believe we met because you slid into my DMs and that you were wanting to get me to be a part of NYA. And you saw that I was making some content. I had engaged with some of your content and we saw that there was some potential to like have pitchers work with catchers. So that was initially like what the initial reach out was. We were going to make some content together. As we were talking that day, I was telling you a little bit about my story and how I had been an in-person coach for over a decade and I just didn't have a lot of time. And my wife and I were trying to have a baby and we were in the process of looking for a home and all of these different dynamics that were going to make it very difficult for me to start that next chapter with how rigorous my schedule was. And it was almost like a light bulb went off in your head. You're like, do you do online coaching? And I was like, I have before, but nothing that was really scalable. And you're like, how about you take a couple seconds, sit down and listen to a pitch I have for you? And that's the intro to where I'm at now.
It's awesome. So, what were the main struggles that you were having as a coach?
I would say time is always the most difficult because don't get me wrong, I love working with in-person clients and a lot of these clients are my family and I've adopted them into my family and I literally take some of these guys out to dinner and hang out with my daughter and my wife. It's nothing against them personally. Their day ends for school at 3 p.m. and that's when they can come in for lessons. So it's 3 to 8 or 3 to 10 p.m. and I'm basically just not doing anything from 7 a.m. to 2. The time side of it is I'm working the opposite of everyone else's job. And it just becomes very difficult to have an at home lifestyle while not having anything to do in the morning besides filming and editing videos. I would say that's the biggest constraint for me is just I don't want to work till 10 p.m. because I want to be able to feed my daughter dinner and put her to bed and have time with my wife in the evenings. That was my initial reason for bringing that up to you was that I didn't have a solution to that problem.
And now, one of the things that has been really interesting for me as I've worked with you is you command really premium prices in person, especially. And we're working on transitioning that over to online because you can actually get better results online. But was that like was that a struggle when you were thinking about how do I do this online? Like, I'm giving away so much money by not just taking an in person lesson. Was that a talk track that you had in your head at all?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that price point for online was a struggle for me initially, at least, because I've been making free content since 2020. So I don't have a problem giving away. It was my give back, but I didn't really know how to monetize it in a scalable way because it comes back to the time constraint. If I'm spending more time doing online lessons, I'm taking away from in-person lessons at some point, and I just needed it to make sense if I was going to be making a transition to remote coaching and not doing as much in person. So as I scaled, I needed it to replace income. But initially, it was more just, hey, I just don't have the market for it. And I don't have the word of mouth that I have for in person. Literally, like I have a 1 month wait list for in person. So that's why I can charge higher pricing because I've reduced the amount of slots that I have available and my demand is still high. I can charge essentially anything I want and people will pay for the results they know they're going to get. So that was my initial thought. And at the start, I didn't mind charging 25, $30 because it was just additional income. But once it started taking over the time that it was taking to do in-person lessons, that's when I was like, okay, I need to make an adjustment to the pricing.
And then when you think about the internal feelings that you're having, any stress that you're having about making the transition online, what was that initial stress? Walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't know how to layer the communication too well. So it was very difficult to make a personal connection. I feel like one of the main contributors to me being successful is being able to articulate myself well and being able to customize what I teach to each individual, but also just the personal connection. I'm a mentor as much as I am a coach and an instructor. That personal connection was very difficult in a Zoom call because Like it doesn't solve my problem again. I'm having to wait till they get out of school at 3 p.m. There's network issues. It gets choppy, it gets laggy. I have to repeat myself a lot because they didn't hear me or their earphones went out or their phone overheated. So a lot of those issues in my mind were making it not realistic to be able to do as many online lessons as I do in-person lessons. So my mind was very much so like time for money mindset instead of thinking like getting my money to work for me and thinking more scalable and thinking less time spending on each client while getting the same results.
Because what they really want is the outcome. And so if you
Mhm.
can help them get to the outcome, regardless of how much time you spend with them, that's ultimately what they want. When you think about your biggest doubt about online coaching, you've talked about this a little bit, but what was the biggest doubt that you had about, I don't know if this is going to work?
Twofold. Like, I feel like I've spent over a decade building up a really good network for in-person clients, and I'm known for getting the
Mhm.
results that I have with the in-person clients. So the couple times that I did try to convert some of those in-person clients to remote, there was a lot of pushback and they were not very receptive to the idea, especially during COVID. A lot of clients were like, we'll just see you when this all sorts itself out. When I was thinking smaller, I was thinking, okay, my network won't convert. I'll only get like 10% of those people to retain. That's not scalable. I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. So I feel like the doubt was coming from a point of thinking very small and not thinking like the reach that we have on social media with the videos we produce and the amount of need there is in the US, but also outside the US. So I feel like before I started talking to you, I was very close minded to the idea because I just saw how people responded to online stuff when they've worked with me in person.
That's really interesting. That makes a lot of sense too, because those are your clients. Up to that point, those are the only people that have really given you money. And
Mhm.
then when you talk about online, they're like, no, I'm not interested. So that makes a lot of sense that you'd be like, oh, wait a second, maybe this isn't a good idea. But you didn't take into account that you have a gigantic audience. Now, not everyone else will have as big of an audience as you. And they didn't start when you started and blow up, and they don't have as many years, but still tapping into a global marketplace with content, there's going to be some people out there that aren't going to be able to work with you if they like you.
That short term mindset came from a geographical mindset. Like I live in Southern California where you say I'd charge premium pricing, but really I'm on trend with where everyone else in my industry is, at least in terms of years of service and like amount I can charge and stuff. So I feel like for my geographical location, it's pretty normal. But yeah, to think, okay, those guys are used to paying a premium price that includes being with an in person client. I didn't think that people outside of the geographical location would be willing to charge same prices. But what I'm learning now is like the geographical location people that may not be used to paying that more premium price also don't have access to premium coaches. So they are willing to pay a premium price if the result is not guaranteed, but at least there's a higher probability of success. So that was an interesting dynamic for me. I started to wrap my head around more recently is those people that aren't used to paying that amount are willing to, they just don't, they can't find anyone worth paying that.
Yeah. If it's a big enough problem, then
Mm-hmm.
they'll go find the person. And if there's no one around, then they'll find someone online. So then when I started working with you, and again, we worked very like informally at the beginning, but what were the big things that we immediately started to implement based off of whatever we had talked about?
I think the biggest problem that I've always had with in-person clientele is that problem of them like going to the lesson, forgetting what we talked about, and then waiting a week to go practice it again, where they're like, hey, what did we work on last week? I don't know. I've worked with 60 other of you. How am I supposed to remember that? But I think that was always my biggest problem. And I started learning from you like right away that feedback loops are so important and accountability on the home front are so important. So the way that you taught me to keep everything accountable and to hold a higher standard to the clients on the home front and to give them like actionable homework assignments, I think that was my initial, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. And he's also going to be super helpful, even just if it's with my in-person stuff. And so that kind of initially drew me in. And then as we were talking, even that first day, I started realizing like, man, there are so many things that I repeat to every single one of my clients. Like I customize everything, but there are certain things that I say that is the same, and that's okay. Like everyone needs to hear certain things. And I hate repeating myself all the time. And I feel like a broken record. What if I started recording those things that I don't want to repeat and then just show my in-person clients a video. And then you showed me some of your Catch You Made Simple stuff, and I saw how you like systematized that and you made it something bigger than just like sending a video. And I was really intrigued by that because I saw the value of people like getting the video and getting to see it more than once and getting to learn from it and being able to like forget something, but then go watch it again and remember it all over again. Those concepts and that system that you showed me day one, that was super powerful for me and it made me buy in.
Let's go. So then we started to build the program, and I kind of at that point was like, Bobby, just build a 4-week program. It's going to be awesome. You built it. And then how did it go?
You were very like kind in the way you described yourself. You said, Bobby, build it tonight. And I was like, okay, I will. You're like, okay, call me when you're done with this part. Okay, Ange, I got so many things to do. You're like, I don't care.
I just met you.
Yeah, just met you. A camp is in like 2 weeks. And then the week before, you had Rack come in and roast me on our Zoom call. I was like, hey, what happens if you get to that camp with 50 kids and they all want to work with you, but you don't have a program? I was like, shut up, Rack. And then the very next day, I went and filmed the whole thing. I think I took 3 days off of work. I canceled all my lessons for 3 days and filmed the whole thing, edited the whole thing. You helped me walk step by step through Kajabi and put it all together. And then it was ready by day one of the camp. Everything was published. And I think I got a couple signups from the camp itself, but just having that published, it gave my DMs that would fill up all the time with inquiries. It gave me something to send to those people that I'd never had able to send before. And so I think initially I got 50 signups or something like that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
As you then had this wave of people going through it, what was it like? What worked well? Where did it struggle? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so every good story has a starting point, and the starting point isn't nearly as good as the finish line. And I feel like I'm still in my infancy, but I think the number one thing that I learned with the first wave of people, because I gave the program away for probably the first 25 people, I just needed reps and I also needed feedback. So I just got testimonials from those people.
So you gave it away for the first 25 people, and that was a 4-week program? Wow.
They were paying my tuition essentially.
You need to learn how to coach online.
I needed to learn how to coach online. I needed to learn how to be better. I didn't feel like I was worth the amount of money I wanted to charge for it. So I needed to get myself prepared to be able to charge what I wanted to charge for it. And so I didn't want to take pennies on the dollar and try to scratch my way through it. I just wanted to really buy in and make sure that I was giving a quality product to these people. I was making sure everyone who knew that they were paying or getting it for free were giving me feedback. I was having them write out what they liked, what they didn't like. And I learned a lot in that first, I think it was like 3 months of not getting paid for it. I think the number one thing that I learned was I was giving people too much information up front. I was super eager and I thought everyone was going to want to work with me 6 days a week. But yeah, it was just way too much information up front. So my initial program had everything that could go wrong in your pitching mechanics and all the drills associated, what might go wrong and how to fix it, and all the drills you can be doing for that day, which is phenomenal. I still use that program to this day. But the thing I do now is I only have athletes work on the 1 or 2 things that they need to be working on at a time. Instead of it being a surface level program, it's more an in-depth dive into that program. I think initially I just really struggled with wrapping my head around the concept that people don't want to work with me 6 days a week. They just want to have something to do at the time that they have allotted to do it. Learning how to not be over ambitious, but also learning how to give them the work that they need to do with the time that they're able to do it. I think that was a really big learning curve for me.
I think I've talked to you about this, but there's what's called a linear path and a circular path. And a linear path is like a very structured, can be a 4, 6, 12-week program. That's what we have with above average throwing. But then a circular path is more of what your roadmap is, where someone comes in, you look at where they are, and then you assess, okay, based off of this, we need to go focus on that. And then you can develop them in the way. And then it's super in depth and robust. Depending on the kid, they can go into either one of those and you have solutions for them with anything in throwing. So just got to say, you did a really good job of identifying that and just actually critically thinking yourself. And now you have these 2 beautiful programs that you can drop kids into and actually solve their problems. So good job on that.
Thank you.
When was the first time that we met up? That was probably what, 2 years ago, I'd imagine.
Oh, dude, it feels like 10 years ago, but I know it's only 2. I think we've done camps
4
together.
NYABCs.
Yeah, it has to be 2 years going on
Yeah.
3. But yeah, that was a crazy story. I think definitely a God thing in my head because my wife and I were praying for another stream of revenue because we wanted to have a child, but we both worked at the time. The amount of money I was making was not enough to support another family member and definitely not enough to afford a new house. So we were praying like crazy. And then our collaboration on online and your DM was an answered prayer to that. And then I initially thought it's like, oh, cool, that'll help with more brand deals, or it'll just get us more connected on social media, which would be good for building out that stuff. And then you showed me the program. I'm like, oh no, this is like God answering my bigger problem, which is my wife needing to retire. So yeah, definitely a God thing, and saw him working through you to be faithful to the hope that we were putting in him for that.
So cool, dude. And so now your wife isn't working, you have a baby, and you have a house, right? Didn't you just buy a house too?
And a car.
A car.
So much has happened this year, man. Yeah, and all glory to God. Like I literally don't even know how we're gonna make mortgage every month, and it just somehow magically is in the bank account. It's
That's
just like all
amazing.
those Stripe pings and the brand deal like notifications, and it's literally just like, how did we pay rent? Like I only worked with 20 clients this week in person, and still were, or mortgage and all that. It's literally like to the dollar every month.
That's crazy. Dude, congratulations, man. That's pretty wild. And I think that you probably would have gotten there regardless of me or not, because ultimately you always find a way, right? And God always provides. But I am glad that this has helped you, because that's like life change, man.
Mm.
It fires me up.
Yeah, I think I would have probably gotten there. I agree with you. I think I would have figured out something, but it would have been the more difficult way. Like I'm all about working hard, and sometimes I take that too far. And I think one of the big things that you taught me was you don't have to work as hard, and you don't have to bottleneck yourself. You can outsource things, you can figure out a more simple way of doing things, and it doesn't have to be all you. So I think you're right in the fact that I would have figured it out, but I also think my quality of life would have been a lot worse had I
Mm.
not gone your direction and started the online coaching and started even reshaping the way I think about my in-person lessons. And now even my college athletes, they're way better off because I took that step of starting to learn from you a little bit.
Come on, fire me up, Bob. Let's go. Okay, now who else do you think would be a good fit if you had another coach in front of you and they were thinking about potentially doing an online program? And again, like I really see this going across all of sports in general. But when you think about the type of person that you've seen be able to be successful coaching online, how would you describe that person?
So not specific names, more just like type of person.
Yeah, like
Okay.
characteristics and qualities. Yeah.
I am a closet introvert, or at least I had security issues that made me super nervous to be in front of a camera. And I didn't really overcome that until I forced myself in front of a camera during 2020, when I knew baseball needed, not to sound conceited, but they needed me. They needed someone who was going to bring light to their dark day. And they needed someone who was going to tell them, like, hey, don't just go back to throwing. So I like overcame my fear and forced myself in front of a camera. And it was extremely cringeworthy. I think you and Rack call it like cringe mountain. Like just climbing cringe mountain was like the most difficult thing in the world for me. So I'm not necessarily saying that you have to be like the most comfortable person in front of a camera in order to be an online coach. You just have to be able to communicate extremely well, and you have to learn the system of, like, whether it's OnForm or any other app that you're using, you have to learn that system to help layer your communication. Because when you're working with someone in person, it's fairly easy to just say, hey, move your shoulders here. But being able to do that through arrows and being able to vocalize the action steps that you're wanting the athlete to take is super difficult and challenging if you don't have experience with it. Someone who is willing to learn new systems, someone who is like able to articulate themselves at least well in person, and someone who has a passion for what they do. Because honestly, like the passion ultimately is what shines through, and you can be really awkward and be really powerful at the same time. People who are really successful online kind of have a weird quirk that makes them relatable. If you're perfect in everything you do, you just look like an AI person. But if you're awkward and weird like me, like you probably do pretty well.
Awesome. That's a great take. That, what you said about being scared to get on camera, one of the things that when I would try to do any sort of public speaking or content or anything that is really helpful, I heard Simon Sinek. Have you ever heard of him?
I think you've mentioned him before.
Maybe I have, but he said basically that if you have a message to share, then it allows you to look past yourself and actually look at the other people. And when you can get external, same thing in sports, right? When you mess up, you're all focused on your feels. When you're playing your best, you're external, you're focused on the ball. And that was a good mindset shift for me. That's a mindset shift that I try to have anytime that I talk. But again, you did that naturally. You're like, they need me. Kids are going to hurt their arms. There's no good positive baseball content. And there was the gap, and you saw it. And so you went and shared and overcame whatever insecurities or struggles that you had with it. So nice job, man. That's great.
I need to go back to being insecure on front of the camera because I feel like my content performed better back then. So maybe I should just start getting scared in front of the camera again.
Well, that was also right at the blast off on TikTok too, right? Because what, 2020? How big did you get on TikTok during that time?
I'd say 75% of my growth happened between 2020 and 2021. 2022. So I blew up, and there was a couple contributing factors. Like I got on MLB's TikTok, like they reached out to me and had me make a post for them. I got on a couple brand deals, got collaborated with a few impactful people on TikTok all around the same time. So there's contributors to that. And also I think I was one of the first like minor league athletes to be on TikTok who wasn't like dancing and thirst trapping. I think I was like the pioneer to online and art instruction on TikTok.
Nice.
I don't think I was the first, but I was definitely one of the few.
And I think you mentioned when you did that, you had a bunch of people reach out to you about online stuff, but you didn't have anything for them at that time, right?
Yeah, definitely missed a wave on that one. I wish we had talked 5 years
A little
prior
bit
because
before that.
we'd be having a completely different conversation. I'd probably be telling you about the 30 or 40 coaches that I have working beneath me and how powerful that was. But different, I think it's the same roadmap, just different points on the timeline. So
Totally.
that's where I'm at. I'm not seeing it as a missed opportunity. I'm seeing it as like potential for what's next.
And then if there was anyone else, any other coaches who had doubts about working with me or creating an online program, what would you say?
The fact that you're doubting is a good sign. That means that you're using wisdom and you're trying to discern if it's worth spending money on. I think I'm just as much of a consumer as I am a creator. So I see what's going on online all the time. I see the ads. There's so many out there that are saying like, hey, with our simple roadmap or with our simple template, you can gain $100,000 a year on a course. And I see it all the time. It's really easy to lose faith just because there's so saturated of a market, but I'm already a living testament to the fact that it does provide value and it does solve your problem. With Ange, he's a systems guy. So you're going to learn a ton of systems. And if you actually put in the work and do the things that he tells you to do, it's actually going to bear fruit. Worst case scenario, you're going to learn how to do so many new things that you never would have done had you not worked with Ange. I didn't even know what Loom was until Ange told me to like go make a Loom about it. I'm like, what's a Loom? He's like, Google it. I'm like, okay, Ange, chill, bro. But like Loom, I'm going to list off a couple of different systems that I learned while working with you. Loom, Notion, Adobe Premiere, Apple, Nikon instead of Canon, Kajabi was a huge one. OnForm, I was like familiar with, but you taught me how to simplify it and communicate better. There's so many different things. And I feel like every time I'm on a call with you, I'm learning about a new app that you're trying out. So you're going to get access to new thoughts, new ideas, new vision. And I think Ange is really big on helping grow his entire community, not just himself. So I feel like when Ange levels up, everyone levels up. And when you're a part of that inner circle with him, you can only hope to grow as much as him. And if you pay close attention to what he's saying, you're going to grow the same way that he does. Yeah, it's not just a one-time purchase thing. He's basically adopting you into his family. So I'm appreciative of it. And I know it's a long-term plan with a long-term person.
Long-term games with long-term people. I love
Yes,
it.
sir.
Cool. Thank you, Bobby. Is there anything else that you would want to share? We covered a lot.
I apologize that I'm still sounding all nasally and sick, but I think just for you guys who, if you're a first timer, not knowing if what you have to offer is a good fit and you don't know if Ange will be able to help you get there, I entered the Ange like realm, very uneducated on online marketing, very uneducated on how systems worked, very uneducated on even like what scalability looked like. I always thought that I had to work hard for my money and I had to be the provider. And Ange just taught me like, and he's still teaching me to this day, like how to make something grow bigger than myself. And I think he's definitely helped broaden my horizons and help me look and think bigger. And that's what it comes down to when you're starting a business is you have to see yourself selling your own business at some point. And if you're the only one working for your business, it's not going to be worth anything because the second you go away, your business goes away. Working with someone like Ange, who's business minded and who is like very in tune with the tiny details, like it really helps you level yourself up and helps you think bigger than maybe what you were previously thinking. So yeah, highly recommend Ange.
Thanks, Bobby.
Yes,
Appreciate you,
sir.
bro.